The ILR School, doing the greatest good by advancing the future of work.
Welcome, everyone, and happy holidays. I know this is a busy time of year, so thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Hope you're all going to be spending some quality time with your loved ones during this holiday season, but we really do appreciate your taking some time to spend with us. We've got a terrific agenda today where I'll cover a few things myself, and then we'll be joined by 3 members of the ILR faculty, as well as a couple of our ILR students. I'm excited to have a chance to give you a brief update on what's been happening at ILR and where we'll be going in the months and years ahead. I'll be introducing the Cornell University Capital Campaign to do the greatest good and ILR's specific goals under this campaign of furthering the impact of ILR on the world of work. And then we'll finish up by taking some of your questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, so please feel free to write your questions in there. And then Jennifer Sellen will monitor the questions and bring them back to the group towards the end of tonight. Let me start off, though, by giving you a brief update on where the school's at and how things have been going. One thing that's been really striking to me as dean in just the brief 3 years since I've been in this job is how much interest there has been in the world of work compared to recent history. I think part of this is what we're seeing in terms of the questioning of what the future of work holds. Certainly technological transformations are at the heart of that, questions around automation of jobs, self-driving cars, discussions like that. But I think also trends like globalization, wealth and income inequality, questions of racial justice, changing shape of jobs and careers, growth of non-standard and gig work, a whole range of issues that ILR speaks directly to. And we're seeing things like the rise of the Me Too movement, that's increased attention to sexual harassment, and a wave of strikes, the discussions of Striketober and Strikevember. All of these things, I think, show us that the issues that ILR is focused on are once again at the center of discussions about where our society is going. The COVID pandemic has certainly accelerated some of these trends and brought other ones to the fore. We think about things like the Zoom meeting that's now part of our common vernacular, as are the ideas of remote and hybrid work. We've got new appreciations for what essential workers are and how we think about health and safety at work. These are important new issues, but they're also things we've been studying for a while. I think about colleagues like our own Professor Brad Bell, who was a leading authority on remote work way before anybody thought about Zoom meeting and have you unmuted yourself, all those things that we talk about all the time now. At the same time, ILRs continue to do well in our traditional areas. Our students continue to be sought after by top employers and go on to attend some of the top graduate professional schools in the world. We continue to be the top institution in our core fields. Our alumni hold leadership positions across industry, government, law, and nonprofit organizations. But we're not resting on our laurels. We are changing to adapt to a changing world. One of the most important ways we've done that is we've undertaken the most significant changes to our undergraduate curriculum in 30 years, and we're going to be implementing those starting this coming fall. Very excited about how that's going to respond to the changing needs of our students and the changing world that we live in. We continue to be an amazing place for both basic social science research, but also one that speaks to core issues affecting policy and practice for workers and workplaces today. President Pollock often talks about the idea of Cornell being a place where we go from theory to practice and back again. And I think ILR really embodies that vision of Cornell as the democratic ivy. This has obviously been a year of 2 years of major change. We've endured the COVID pandemic that I'm sure is at the forefront of many of our minds. That has been challenging for ILR as it has been for organizations and society in general. We've tried to stay true to our core values through our response, continue to provide an excellent education for our students. Last year, as you may know, Cornell operated in a hybrid fashion with a mixture of remote and in-person classes, but bringing students back to campus under an intensive regime of testing, quarantining, and masking. This year, with vaccinations available, we've been able to have a more normal semester, while continuing to take precautions. I'm only not wearing a mask right now because I'm alone in my office. Otherwise, we are taking measures to make sure our community is safe. ILR, our faculty and staff have adapted, and they've really ensured that our students have had a great educational experience. One thing I really noticed this fall was our students were happier to be back on campus in Ives Hall than I think I've ever seen them. They really are appreciating the benefits of an in-person campus residential education. Financially, the school continues to be sound. We modified some of our operations during the pandemic to save money on things like travel and other non-personnel expenditures while minimizing the impact on our students and on our employees. We've also shifted to a lot of virtual mechanisms for delivering some of our professional education programs that are based in New York City and around the state. We're going to return to those when conditions are safe, but we've adapted successfully to a period when that wasn't possible. We continue to launch new capabilities that are helping to guide workers and organizations during the pandemic. We were the leading source of information on work and coronavirus during the pandemic when you're doing Google searches on it. And we're continuing to provide new tools, including our labor action tracker, an exciting new tool for following strikes around the country that was developed by one of my own PhD students, Johnny Callis. I'm very proud of him. And it's become the premier source of information about strikes around the country. ILR also continues to be a leader in the area of workplace diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's both through our research. We have top faculty researching that area, both through our on-campus educational programs and beyond in our outreach programming. That's also something that we've brought into our curriculum updates. We've got a new required course, Foundations of Diversity Dynamics, where our faculty experts on diversity, equity, and inclusion are bringing their expertise to our students as part of a new required course, which I think is going to be a really exciting addition to our programs. Now, that all said, we've made a lot of progress, but there's also challenges as well as opportunities that lie in front of us. Certainly one of the challenges continues to be the COVID pandemic. We've been engaging in that set of practices on campus to keep things safe, the vaccination, the testing, the quarantining, and the masking. But the reality is COVID is a challenge, and we face that too. Our cases did jump after Thanksgiving, after the break, during a period when we had holiday traveling. And there have been social gatherings that have significantly spread COVID infections. We are responding as a university, and that is a challenge. Fortunately, a fully vaccinated student body has meant that so far we have not had serious illness. That's a real blessing, and something I think we're all more and more aware of given the losses that so many in our society have faced. The university has moved its alert level to our yellow alert level, and we have taken steps to continue to keep our community safe. A big challenge and a big priority for me has been dealing with the challenge that our amazing world-class faculty includes many faculty who've been with us for many years, 40, even 50 years on the ILR faculty. In the natural course of time, a number of those faculty have been retiring over the past few years, and several more are going to be retiring over the next few years. That is a challenge in the sense that we need to bring in great new faculty to keep ILR's strength in research and also to be able to teach our students. We have been hiring some fantastic new faculty over the last few years, including some faculty you're going to meet tonight, and that's strengthening the school. But we are going to need to keep hiring faculty. That's something that I anticipate being a continued priority of mine as dean for the next few years. Another big challenge for us is affordability of higher education. Higher education is a people business. It requires people to deliver education, and the cost of people has grown, and that creates issues of affordability and access to higher education. Cornell does do a lot to help lower income families and provide paths to a top-notch education. However, we've identified this as an area that we need to make a priority to expand access to education. A major thing that we've noticed, particularly doing analysis of who comes to Cornell, of the potential students out there, is we notice we've done a really good job of enhancing access to families in the lowest income quintile. Those are families where we're providing the complete cost of attendance. That ranges up to families making up to $65,000 a year. The complete cost of attendance, including both tuition and room and board, is paid through Cornell financial aid. However, it drops off as you go above that level. And what we've found is the second and third income quintiles, still families that by no measure would you describe as well off, they are having difficulty attending and accessing Cornell. There's a lower proportion of their students with the same SAT scores, the same GPAs, a lower proportion attending Cornell. And that's something that we're really concerned with as a university, given our mission to be this democratic Ivy that provides access. And that's going to be one of the big focuses in the new campaign that we're engaged in. So I want to spend a few minutes talking about that Cornell capital campaign. So I'm sure many of you know Cornell's recently launched this campaign. We've got a goal of raising $5 billion over the next 5 years. It's an ambitious goal, but it's important if we're going to achieve this mission. And the effort is really guided by the mission that our founder, Ezra Cornell, set of to do the greatest good with the resources of the university. What does that mean? Well, honoring this vision of any person, any study, ILR is tasked with raising $75 million during this 5-year period. And what we want to use it for is to strengthen core areas. Undergraduate affordability through scholarships, that's foundational to the success and the accessibility. Faculty positions and research funds, that's a second core priority. We've got to have great faculty to provide great education for students. We also want to provide more summer and internship support for our students. That's a high priority and something that we're worried varies by family income. Families with lower income have difficulty sending their students on the same internship and other summer opportunities. We want to help them do that. And we want to provide continued support for basic academic programs and our annual fund, which is our most important flexible funds. That's really important to make all our operations work well. Our hope through the campaign is to show how ILR generates impact on the world of work and how we as a school are striving to do the greatest good. We're going to illustrate this tonight by taking a look at some of the research being done at ILR that focuses on some key aspects of the changes that we're seeing going on in the world of work. So this includes some really important big questions, such as how do we address the various forms of inequality in the workplace? Inequality is one of the touchwords of our era, and it's something that we look at intensively in many different forms in the workplace. We also live in a global era, and a second big question we're thinking about is how do we understand and solve the challenges of an increasingly global workforce? The things that we consume, they're produced all over the globe, and we need to understand how they are produced, what goes into making them, if we're going to understand the modern world of work. And then lastly, how do we see the future of work evolving, transforming our workplaces, the lives of workers? This is something that I think we've all thought a lot about as we transformed how we're working to be working remotely, working from living rooms, basements, children's bedrooms. The workplace is a very different place today. As we come out of the pandemic, we expect to see more transformations, and we want to think about what all of this means. I'm going to invite our faculty in a few minutes to spend a little time talking about their research and how it impacts the world of work. But first off, I want to show you a 3-minute video that we've produced with the intent of making our mission and the work we do at ILR a little more relatable to those beyond our ILR community. Our ILRs know our world pretty well, but we've tried to take a step back, really think about the value that ILR brings to the broader world, how we can explain it to a broader audience. We know that while there are many paths we take as ILRs, all those roads do revolve around this world of work and labor and employment and its widespread impacts on pretty much every person in the world. So let's take a moment and watch the video.
There are nearly 8 billion people on the planet, and most of us work. We work to earn a paycheck and provide for ourselves and our families. Work can also help us learn and grow, and to find meaning, dignity, and respect. Since 1945, Cornell University's ILR school has been at the heart of extraordinary changes in the workplace. Following Ezra Cornell's vision to do the greatest good, the ILR school is committed to teaching, research, and outreach that addresses the most important issues shaping the workplace of tomorrow.
Cornell has all these avenues that offer opportunities to kids that don't even know or think they have them.
As a first-generation college student, I have seen inequities in all places of our society.
I study the difference between compliance and consent and how that can impact Me Too dynamics in the workplace.
Through Cornell and the ILR school, I'm given opportunities to further develop my leadership skills in order to help future generations of students like myself.
I've studied finance from a unique perspective, the people's perspective and the workers' perspective. And what it has done, it's inspired me to push forward and fight for policies that enable finance for all.
My work seeks to understand the experiences of marginalized communities in the workplace and how to create more inclusive organizations.
For people to have tough conversations and to unpack and have those discussions about how they feel, what they see, and how to handle situations.
Because more than half of the United States farm workers are unauthorized, I study how we can improve their labor and working conditions through immigration reform.
In a changing workplace with intermixed cultures, it's important to understand new perspectives and differing backgrounds.
My research focuses on workers' activism in authoritarian regimes and emerging democracies in the Middle East and North Africa.
Too often, the national debates around climate change are defined as jobs versus the environment, workers versus environmentalists, and there's not a debate about how we can have good jobs and a healthy environment.
I study the impact of technological change, not just on managers, but on workers, the people who supply the labor that unlocks that technology. It's our job to make sure that our students, future managers and policymakers, have both hands on the wheel and really have the knowledge and the confidence to deliver the future that they want.
And we're at the crossroads, I think, for really redefining the workplace. But the building blocks I got 4 years in IMES are really helping me, at least with the perspective, as we change the nature of work and we really change how technology interacts with it.
It's important. We're training future entrepreneurs here, and they're going to create the jobs of tomorrow.
At ILR, our students study the world of work from all different perspectives. As alumni, they go out and do the greatest good by advancing the future of work. Hope you'll enjoy that. I think it really helps convey how ILR impacts the world of work. Now I'd like to welcome Vanessa Bonds, who's an associate professor of organizational behavior here at ILR, and she's been doing to understand basic processes of influence, consent, that have important implications for how we think about addressing inequalities in the workplace through the understanding of our own behaviors. Vanessa, can you tell me a little about your research and why it's important?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So my research is on social influence, and as is typical for research on that topic, I really started out trying to understand how to get people to agree to things that we'd like them to do. Basically, how to get people to say yes. However, pretty early on, what I discovered is that it's actually much harder for people to say no to us than we realize. And that discovery really changed how I thought about social influence and the questions I started to ask in my research. So rather than continuing on this trajectory of figuring out more ways to influence people and get people to do things for us, I started to examine a question that I think has been really neglected in social influence research, which is whether we know when someone is agreeing to do something for us, something that they really don't want to do because they feel uncomfortable saying no. The reason I think that's such an important question is that it applies to all sorts of really consequential situations, such as people who are goaded into engaging in unethical behavior or into agreeing to unwanted romantic advances at work.
And these dynamics have implications for inequality in the workplace because the research is quite clear on showing that these sorts of situations, such as those involving unwanted romantic advances in the workplace, affect women more than men.
So what impact do you hope that your research will have?
So one thing my research suggests is that there are cases where people may feel coerced into doing things they really don't want to do, but we may be completely oblivious to our own role in creating that uncomfortable situation for other people. This is particularly true for people in positions of power. And if people in positions of power fail to recognize the extent of their influence, they may end up abusing it. We saw these dynamics play out in many of the Me Too stories from the past few years, where there were some monstrous cases for sure, but then there were these other cases where people seemed almost oblivious to the ways in which they had impacted other people. So the impact I'd really like my work to have is to help people become more mindful of how hard it is for other people to speak up against us or say no to us, so we're less likely to put other people in those kinds of situations.
Thanks, Vanessa. I think this is really a great example of how understanding those real fundamental underpinnings of how we behave can really help us think about difficult situations that are encountered every day in the workplace. Next, I'd like to welcome Sarah Besky, who's an associate professor of international comparative labor and of labor relations law and history. Sarah's a cultural anthropologist and has done some really interesting research that focuses on groups of workers that most of us give little thought to, even though many of us do consume the products that they produce. Sarah, could you tell us a little about your research and why it's important?
Sure. Thanks. Hi, everyone. So yes, as an anthropologist, as a cultural anthropologist, I tend to spend long periods of time, like years really, in one place, trying to study how a problem is held together. And so for me, that problem is labor conditions on tea plantations in India. But I also want to attend to the tentacular reach that tea and really any commodity has across the globe. So when I study or I teach about labor conditions in global supply chains, whether it be tea or otherwise, I want to understand how those conditions enable not just what we eat or drink, but also how the thing itself kind of tastes, looks, and feels, and smells even. How consumers expect commodities to be, how they expect them to feel, materially and aesthetically, shapes labor conditions and sites of production, and not always for the good. So whether it's tea or coffee or sugar or palm oil or rubber, plantations in particular are not far off, and they're certainly not bygone places of production. Production is not far removed from us. We're always inextricably kind of part of it, linked to it. Labor, right, as we talk about a lot in ILR, is a relation. But for me as an anthropologist, it's a relation not just with management. It's much broader than that. So to me, telling stories about the lives of plantation workers helps make something like global supply chains, which is like a totally abstract concept, really, but make it less abstract, make it more grounded by using kind of grounding global linkages in the words and the stories of workers themselves.
So what do you hope people will take away from your research and what impact it'll have?
So tea, as you may know, is the second most consumed beverage in the world behind water. But it's perhaps somewhat ironic and surprising even that the general public knows, like in general public, I would include tea retailers here, kind of knows like really nothing about the conditions of production. And I think there's reasons why that's not out of just sheer ignorance. It's about kind of the occlusions about plantation production. But in specifically, it's about plantations that are obfuscated and about the racialized and gendered inequalities kind of engendered by the plantation system that is so occluded. So in terms of public outreach, I do a lot of public writing, right? From like literary magazines to like trade publications to tell stories about the lives and conditions of tea plantation workers. And this is actually where I felt like I've had the most impact. I thought I would be other places, but it was here. And I write about kind of compensation structures and labor laws and ecological conditions and constraints that hold the plantation together, and really importantly, make plantations incredibly, if not impossibly, difficult to pull apart. And that make it really difficult to make tea differently or to imagine tea differently. And so you, right, sitting wherever you may be sitting, right, I imagine like seeing fetishized and exoticized, feminized images of tea workers on the wall of your local coffee shop. But when you talk to real workers at length, and ask them to situate their work and their plantation within broader social and historical phenomena, it feels a much different story. And that story is thornier and it's more complicated. And that's the kind of work that I want to share with folks both inside and outside the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. I will say, as somebody who's an inveterate tea drinker myself, I'm English by origin, and I still drink my cuppa every morning, that, listening to your research has changed how I think about that. And it's not just those pretty pictures of the tree plantations anymore. It's actually the people who are doing that quite hard work, picking the tea. As our final faculty speaker, I'd like to welcome Adam Seth Litwin, who's an associate professor of labor relations law and history. Adam's been doing some really interesting research around the nexuses of technology and work in healthcare. Can you tell me a little about your research, Adam, and why it's important?
Of course. Good evening, Alex. Good evening to all of you. So I study what most people call the future of work. And really, that's the intersection of employment relations and technological change. I collect some, but not all of my data from the healthcare sector. For me, it all started when I was a PhD student at MIT, and I had the opportunity to work with a group of people studying the labor management partnership at Kaiser Permanente. And when I did that, I got real up close and personal with something that we weren't really supposed to be paying much attention to, and that was the deployment of their electronic health record system. They thought of it as a tech project, and I was watching people transition from paper-based record keeping to electronic health records, and what I noticed was that everything that really worked because of the labor management partnership, and everything that failed because of the labor management partnership. And so ILR alums won't be surprised to learn that it turns out that workers really matter, and that workers really can determine how well a technology is deployed, whether or not it really does what an employer wants it to do. So here's the thing. I just said that most people call what I study the future of work, and kind of reluctantly now I do too, but really only to fit in, because at ILR we know a few things that I think other people don't. First off, we know that the future is already here. It just turns out that it's not very evenly distributed. We know the future of work is here, particularly if we just had our dinner delivered tonight by a gig worker, or if we've ever used TaskRabbit or any of the other platforms that get us from place to place, for example. Second, we know what the future of work is really about. And for this, you grab a hold of your seat. The future of work is about work. That may seem really hard to swallow, but to date, I think almost all of the future of work conversation has really been about the technology, which is really shiny and really interesting, but it hasn't been about work or workers or even employers. And what I would say is that the very few social scientists that are bringing work into these studies at all, they like to decompose jobs into tasks, or they like to look at sort of the micro interactions between workers and their computers. And yeah, like these observable behaviors, that's where the rubber meets the road. They're crazy important. But we know that all of this happens in the context of an employment relationship that's rife with power dynamics, where markets and institutions collide. And that's what we can bring to this study of the future of work. What's really, really driving the way workers and technology interact to drive the outcomes that people care about?
That's fascinating. Yeah, and so let me ask you the same question. What impact do you hope that this research is going to have?
Well, so researchers and the media, I think, are really obsessively focused on one question, which is, are robots and artificial intelligence coming for our jobs? And there's sort of the utopian answer, which is to say, yeah, they're coming for our jobs and it's fabulous, because either none of us will have to work, or maybe we'll only have to work something like 3 hours a day. That's what John Maynard Keynes predicted in 1930. Then there's the dystopian view that says, no, robots are going to take all of our jobs. And it's really problematic because it's going to deprive many of us of even the most basic resources, the ability to feed ourselves and clothe ourselves. So it turns out I think my research can actually answer this question. And I'm going to do it for you right now, which is to say there is good news and bad news. The good news is that there will be plenty of jobs for the foreseeable future. The bad news is that on our present path, most of those jobs are going to be really, really lousy. And that's because employers have really unmitigated power that allows them to choose technologies that permanently restructure labor relations in ways that erode wages, quash worker voice, and I think ultimately trap us in these low productivity production structures that are going to harm everybody. But we can fix it, and I think that's where my work comes in. If we can understand what drives employers' tech investment decisions, then we can actually change the rules of the game to make sure that when employers compete, that competitive instinct actually leads to the development and the adoption of technologies that will benefit us all. So to put it another way, I think that industry and innovators really have their foot on the gas pedal. Over the next 5 to 10 years, I think digitization and AI are going to yield material increases in worker productivity, and that's fantastic. And I think the pandemic has actually probably accelerated this because advances in digitization and AI, they really had to figure out how to use work from home tools to make production and service delivery to remake it in a big way. So we've got the acceleration. I mean, I like to think that the research that I do and the research that people like me do is sort of like a steering wheel, and it can guide us to a world, which technology really benefits us all. So I mean, that's what gets me out of bed in the morning. That and my dog.
Well, I think that's one of the things that we really hope that the students we're educating are going to be able to take away from their ILR education, those kind of understandings that will help them be the ones who are helping craft those paths that, as you say, are really determined by what we choose to do as a society, as individuals, as people to think about how technology is going to be used and how we approach it. And hopefully that's something that the ILR education is going to give our students, and they'll be able to make those key decisions shaping the future. Yeah, I do want to now shift our focus over to our students, because we have some amazing students at ILR, and we continue to have some of the brightest, most talented and passionate students around. And the work that we do to educate them and help realize their potential in life is really something that does get us up in the morning. I also have a dog who happily licks my face, but I come into work because of the students, because they're here. And our students are amazing. They tend to be leaders. They're leaders in the classroom across the university. We continue to be overrepresented in student government amongst trustees, student trustees, and ultimately leaders in their chosen fields, which I think is what motivates us and the work that we do. One of the things I've really learned from them over the years, from our alumni, and I'm an alumnus myself, PhD 99, is that we do have this common bond, a real unique perspective from the education that we've all had at ILR, where we have certain ways of thinking about things, exactly what we've just been hearing, the way of questioning assumptions about how work, how labor, how employment's organized in society, and to try and make it better. To do that, what we try to do is provide a really challenging, effective learning environment for our students, and for them to know that we care about their success. We're a small college within a large university, and I think that's a really important part of Cornell, part of ILR. Another thing that's really important is that ILR is the most diverse school at Cornell, and we take pride in that. And we strive to provide opportunities for students who wouldn't otherwise have them. People talk about Cornell as the Democratic Ivy. ILR continues to be the place that students who otherwise might not get to the Ivy League get to us and get to further their educations. And that's an important part of our mission. It's part of our strength. The multitude of backgrounds we have amongst our students really adds to the richness of our community and our classrooms. So I'd like to run a last quick video so that you can hear directly from two of our ILR students talking about how ILR has impacted their lives and how they're doing the greatest good with their education. So over to our students.
As a first-generation college student, I've never seen someone go through college. I've never seen what a college education could do. I think that if I had not went to ILR, I would have never known that I wanted to join labor law and advocate for those in the workplace. I would have never known that I can set goals for myself and pursue them. I would have never known how much I could do.
There's something unique about ILR in which you are shown a new way of looking at how government works, learning how policy works, learning how people's lives are impacted, reforming and reshaping, and just looking at the world of work, right? No matter what you do in your life, you're going to work in some way. And I think the best thing that ILR does towards that greater good is whatever field you're going towards, you're given a base and you're given this sort of home structure of everything I do, I can look through the lens of people and look through the lens of how we work. For me specifically, that greatest good looks like we've got policies in city government and we want to benefit people, right? We're trying to help people have better lives. We're trying to help people have a better way of living. I really focus with ADR and I really focus with government, right? I use the skills that I learned in mediation and arbitration and conflict resolution to try and pass policy. ILR is so encompassing. There's so many different things that everybody's interested in, and whatever it is you're interested in, you can go and be the best at it.
I have taken full advantage of all the ILR resources. I've done the High Road Fellowship, I've done winter break exploration programs with the ILR Labor Employment Program, and every single ILR program I've done has been so unique and has impacted me in so many different ways. ILR does the greatest good by allowing students to reach their fullest potential. ILR shows us how many different things we can do with this one major. I think donations to this school are changing the world in so many different ways because these donations aren't just going to one cause. They're going to helping people learn about global experiences.
Well, I've been incredibly fortunate to be able to take advantage of a lot of the opportunities that ILR offers, especially with ADR things specifically. This past winter, I virtually traveled to Vietnam and was able to participate in a 2-week program learning all about arbitration and the new Vietnamese labor code, which was just fascinating. Very thankful to work with not just ILR faculty, but with the extension folks and work with our neutral and residents and being able to learn about arbitration in an international sense.
Being first generation, education never seemed like an option for me. It just seemed like I had to settle down for whatever life threw at me. But ILR has given me the opportunity to create my own path. And more importantly, I know I didn't have any role models that pursued education when I was younger. And I have a little brother and I have many younger cousins. And now I know that they can look at me and they can see what ILR has done for me and follow their own education paths. And that's something that no one can put a price tag on.
It's not hard to come to any great university across the country and go, I'm going to make a ton of money and I'm going to go and do that and it's going to be great. It's something special about being able to say, what I learn here is going to not only transform my career, but it's going to transform my life in a way that impacts everybody else around me in a positive way. I'm so thankful and just so grateful to be able to come here. I can't speak highly enough of the education I've gotten, I continue to get, and how much I intend to change the world with it.
Thanks to Salima and Patrick for taking their time to record their thoughts for us. I heard they had a great time doing it, and they're really exceptional students and wonderful representatives of our student body. Now, let me turn over to Jennifer Sallin, who will be fielding some of the questions that are being submitted. Jennifer, what do we have for questions?
Thank you, Alex. There's so many questions coming in. I'm trying to group them together. So let's start off with inclusion. What are we doing to promote inclusion at ILR?
So that's been a really big priority for us, and we're approaching it in different ways because of the many different areas. So within our own community, that's been a big priority. We've got a belonging initiative here at Cornell and at ILR. We've been really focused on thinking about our community, how we can inclusive community internally at ILR. We've had a series of meetings amongst different groups within our community to discuss this, and we're talking about what we can do to break down some of the barriers within our community, certainly by gender and race, ethnicity, but also some of the structural divides that exist within any university, faculty versus staff, and so on. We're also trying to make this really central to our research and our education efforts. So we've got an increasing number of faculty who study issues of inclusion and diversity, and that's helping us provide more courses for students in this area. As I mentioned, we have a new undergraduate course requirement in this area, so that's really important. We're also expanding our outreach efforts, working with organizations, both management side and union side, about issues of diversity and inclusion, and so that's something that we've expanded our strength and are continuing to expand our strength in.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about current labor relations education at ILR and our work with unions?
Yeah, so that continues to be an important priority for us, both on the resident, undergrad, and graduate student side, and in our outreach work. On the resident side, it continues to be a core part of what our undergraduate students study. We are not changing in the curriculum, the fact that our students study labor relations, and we continue to have great courses, elective courses available for the students there. We are in a process of strengthening our offerings for graduate students in this area. That's something that we thought we could do more of, and we've got a faculty committee working away on a new master's level program in this space. So that was one of the areas I thought we could do better, and our faculty have strongly felt that. So we're trying to expand there. On the outreach side, that continues to be one of our main outreach areas, is working with unions. We've got our traditional strength through our ULI program, which educates up-and-coming labor leaders in New York State. We've got this great national program, NELI, that takes that national educating labor leaders around the country. We've got a couple of great new hires of extension faculty in these areas to support those programs. So I'm very optimistic about where those programs are going.
Great. Is there anyone at ILR studying the response to worker responses and the vaccine mandates?
We've got faculty studying different aspects of kind of the COVID response. So we had some research looking at kind of the impact on workers of the different measures, the remote work and other measures. One of our new faculty members, Professor Michelle Below, did an interesting survey looking at that and looking at some of the issues around differential access to things like remote work. And it turns out, even though that's sort of being discussed as a major part of what people are doing, it's a very small segment, relatively speaking, within the overall workforce who that's impacted. Much of the workforce has not had the ability to work remotely, to do Zooms. It's hard to do Zoom if you're working in a factory or a meat processing plant or a retail store. And so her research kind of really shows the kind of differential impact of the COVID measures. Obviously, things are changing over time with the COVID issues. Mandates in the workplace are a big issue now. There's certainly faculty who've got expertise in sort of the general area. I haven't seen the latest research project to come out yet on that, so I'm waiting to see if that's something that our faculty will jump on. I think there's a lot of interesting issues there that would be worth exploring.
Great. So what are some examples of other ILR research that impacts the public at large?
That's a great question. We do have a sort of incredible diversity of what our faculty are researching. I think when we think about kind of the public good, there's many dimensions of it. One example from one of our most senior faculty members, Professor Jim Gross, has been doing some really interesting stuff on a question of health and safety, and that is a sort of fundamental right. Thinking about it from that perspective, which obviously has implications for things like the safety measures taken under COVID. But it really gets at that question of the public good there. We also have a lot of faculty looking at international comparative issues, where we look at how different countries are approaching things. And I think that really gets at the question, some of the public policy questions that are really important to think about. Even in my own research, part of my research, I look at Anglo-American countries. So I look at countries like Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Ireland. And in a relatively similar set of countries, we've seen interesting variations in approaches to dealing with some of the big public policy issues. You see this even during the pandemic. If you think about how New Zealand approached things under Jacinda Ardern, their prime minister, with kind of this very different approach from what we took in the United States, and then different again in Australia under Scott Morrison, their prime minister. Three sort of quite different countries in terms of the political leadership, but then also quite different kind of national approaches to a similar kind of challenge. So many of our faculty are looking at those kind of global policy comparisons, and that's something I think that's a real increasing strength of the school, is that increasingly international perspective.
Great, thank you. Dean, Alex, you mentioned scholarship aid as a priority for the campaign. What are some other fundraising priorities that you're considering?
So certainly, yeah, scholarship aid is right at the top of the list. I think that's really fundamental. Certainly, funds to support faculty hiring and research is a high priority for me. That's one of the things that I'm busiest working on, and right now is the middle of the faculty hiring season, so it's right at the front of my mind. We've already hired 3 new faculty just over the last month. We're hoping to hire some more soon. So that's been very important and exciting. I also am putting a priority on supporting the work of some of our centers and institutes. We've got some amazing ones out there in our ILR community, our Yankton Institute on Employment and Disabilities, our Scheinman Institute on Conflict Resolution, our Worker Institute that does many of our labor programs, our Center for Advanced Human Resource Studies. So support for their important work is really an important thing. As you may notice by the names, a couple of them have names in front of them, which means that we have extra support for them. I'd love to put names in front of a couple of the other ones. So if anybody out there would like to name the Worker Institute or CARS, give me a call.
Great. So we're just over time, so I have 2 more questions, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep.
A few people have asked about the curriculum. Are there some specific examples of changes that were made? You mentioned one earlier, but this person would like a little more information on that.
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, the new diversity course requirement, we've restructured how we're teaching some of the intro courses to really emphasize the basic social science disciplinary knowledge that we're hoping students to get. We've got a new required course in psychology of work, one in sociological organizations, another one in sociology of work. So that gives students a clear grounding in the basic social science disciplines. We're also adding an international course requirement to strengthen the global perspective students are getting during the curriculum. So I think that's really going to enhance things. We're also extending the data science part. We have still going to have the basic statistics course that everybody took in their time at ILR, but we're going to layer on top of it a second course that's one from a range of courses dealing with more applied issues of data science, which I think is really something that's going to equip our students well when they go out into their subsequent careers. So really, I think some exciting changes in the curriculum.
Great. And the last one, what can alumni do to help the school?
So alumni are a real strength of the school. One of the things we know is that ILRs are some of the most passionate alumni at Cornell. One of the ways is to participate in alumni events. You're joining on this call today, which is really awesome, and I thank you all for being here with us. Keep coming out to alumni events. Participation is really important from our alumni. If you are in the position to hire students for winter or summer internships or even for permanent jobs, that is incredibly helpful for our students. So please do that, and please be in touch. Our career office would love to hear from you. Our internship office would love to have more great internships to offer our students. So that's a really concrete way you can help our students. And then thirdly, philanthropic gifts really help the school enormously. Our alumni have been incredibly generous, and particularly so the last few years, and that has really improved the position the school's in. It's strengthened the school. We're stronger as a school within Cornell because of your support, your generosity, and it really makes an enormous difference on the bottom line for students. So that giving is really helpful, and I want to thank everybody for that.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you for Professor Bonds, Professor Adam Seth Litwin, and Sarah Besky. Thank you so much. And thank you, Alex, for hosting this time for us to get together. We'll all be in touch soon, and I hope that you all have a lovely holiday season.
Happy holidays.